Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co-host Vince, and today we are excited to bring you a military spouse doing great things in North Carolina. Vince will introduce.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We are here today with Amy Schweizer. She is a founder and director of Tiny Troops Soccer in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Welcome to the show. Before we dive into Tiny Troops Soccer, please, Amy, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally, I guess thanks for having me first. So I'm originally from Danville, Illinois. So it's a small town. It is not Chicago. If you're not from there, I say, "Are you from there?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "By Chicago," even though it's not at all. But if you're from there, I'll tell you where it is. So Danville, Illinois. I have a background in sport management. That's what my master's degree is in. I had the opportunity to work with the 76ers and a couple of other teams during my grad school experience. Met my husband, and who is an active duty Marine. He just hit 20 years this past November. So we're excited about that. I have three little boys who are, how old are they? 9, 7, and 5. Yeah, we're at the 5, 7, 9 stage. So 5, 7, and 9 right now. And yeah, we're currently in Jacksonville. I'm in Swansboro, a little town right next to it, but North Carolina. My husband's stationed at Camp Lejeune. So that's the quick rundown.
Outstanding. And, I spent some time in Rantoul, Champaign, Illinois.
Yeah, okay. So you do know. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's been a long time, but I did spend some time there and at the Air Force Base when it was there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about your trajectory, your plan for this company, and I'm so tickled about how you took something that was obviously a thought in your head and say, I could do this. So tell us a little bit more about Tiny Troop Soccer.
Yeah, so a lot of it goes into the pre-story of it, if you don't mind. So I've always been very career driven, and I was kind of one of those who said, if I get married, great, that would add something to my life, but I'll have my career will be good. I'll be good no matter what. So, and then of course, fast forward, and here I am, 3 boys and married. But marrying. When I met my husband, we actually met at a job fair. So I was working as the program director at the Boys and Girls Club. And then his recruiting table was right next to mine at a job fair. And so he had on his dress blues. We started chatting. He swears that I would have never spoken to him otherwise. But we go on our first date, and I said, "Well, just so you know, I'm moving to Jacksonville, Florida at the end of the year because I'll be working with the Jaguars." So I'd already been down there and chatted with him. And he's like, "Okay, well, just so you know, I'm moving to California right about that time." And we're like, "Great." Fast forward a year to the end of the year, I'm married in California, right? Not in Jacksonville, Florida, working for the Jaguars. And so moving there was a big shock. So the military in itself, prior to meeting my husband, I simply knew, like, yay, we support the troops, right? Like, go troops. And that was it. And so marrying into it, totally like, whoa, whirlwind. Like, I became a dependent, which everyone in my family, my friends just thought that was hilarious because like, I'm completely the opposite of that word. And, I had to like have him to go to the dentist and stuff. And I'm like, what has happened to my life? Like, what is happening? So then getting married to him, like, really not having job opportunities that incorporated my experience and what I was passionate about and wanted to do was really, really hard for me personally and on our marriage beginning. And so after California, within a year or two, I had my first son, and then we were moved to Okinawa. So the job opportunities there are even more limited, right? And especially anything in my field is kind of non-existent. And so there was actually another spouse there who I'd met, and she was just like kind of leading some kids in some soccer stuff. And she's like, "Hey, do you want to help do this?" And I thought, not really. But then on the other hand, I wanted to do something, and my son needed something to do as well. Like we kind of felt like we were trapped on an island, which you kind of are in Okinawa, right? So we kind of felt that. And so he needed to get out and socialize and move his body. I needed to get out and be focused on something. And so I started coaching it. And then I just turned it into a bona fide program. And so we ran over in Okinawa, and then that spurred my need for hiring other military spouses, and really spurred my passion for military spouse employment. And so I had more spouses on staff. And then once everyone started PCSing, I was like, do you have a job yet? Have you thought about anything? And everyone's like, no. I'm like, don't get a job. I have an idea. Like, let's do this. And so that's how Tiny Troop Soccer was born. As my original coaches started moving, we started Tiny Troop Soccer in the States, and then we've expanded from there.
Well, I will say thank you for the Marine being in his dress blues, because that's what started the whole thing. But the origin story is amazing. And we definitely appreciate everything you're doing there. So tell us a little bit about, how did the pandemic affect or influence Tiny Troop Soccer?
Yeah, so it had a big impact like everyone else, but ours is a little different because we work in 17 states, and then we also have locations in Okinawa, Japan, and Yokosuka. And so, as you all know, each state had its own regulations. Each county had its own regulations. Each city had its own regulations. Each parks department that we dealt with, each school that we play at, so it was like, we're going down like, okay, what's allowed, what's not. One thing that really worked in our favor, our sessions, our practices, what we call them, they only have a maximum of 8 kids anyways. And so that small number helped us out a lot. But there was a point in time, I forget, but we were off the field everywhere for at least 5 months, I think. And then just slowly started adding, and like our Hawaii locations just got started in the last few months, and might have to reverse again there. I don't know. So it's definitely impacted us. It made me look a lot more at the business side, the financials and things like that, because luckily there's no debt in the business. I didn't have to worry about that. And with my coaches, it was just kind of like, we don't have any sessions to coach. So, I can't do much about that. But admin side, I thought, man, I really would like to be giving them something during this time, which I hadn't prepared for prior to this, because it was just kind of a fluid business. And so that definitely made me pause and get a better handle on my finances.
And I love how we get different stories of the impact. Everybody has their individual input, and are receiving different things from that cycle, the last 2 years, right? Everybody. So I'm glad that you were able to at least keep some type of functioning or functionality in the business to continue now. And I'm so happy. I spent a lot of time in Hawaii, so I'm happy to hear that they started back up. But I know what you're saying; they keep going back and forth. It's another island to be stuck on, right? So some people feel that way. But that. So you had that impact from the last 2 years. Things are changing around the world. You mentioned that you're now, internationally, so that's a tough situation to kind of handle. So what's on the horizon? What does the future look like for troops?
Yeah, so ideally, Tiny Troop Soccer would be the soccer program run at every base. So a lot of them have some other programs that I won't mention by name, but a lot of them have some of those. And I would like to be that program where it's just an automatic, it's a good developmental program. And so that's the pipe dream, right? But I'm sure you guys know working with installations can be very, very difficult, which is one of the platforms that I'm really pushing for. And actually, I'm a candidate for the Military Spouse of the Year this year. And that's what I'm pushing for, is that I want to be in the room with these DoD officials and, the base leadership to get a consistent process for military spouse entrepreneurs, or even just businesses in general, not only from, even if we just got a consistent process within one branch, that would be a step up, because it's just so different on each of these bases and what they allow, what they don't. If you have to be a, NFE, if you have to do a private organization, if you have to contract with MCCS, ACS. So it's just, I have a folder that's like, and sometimes it takes months and months. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like, just forget it. And so anyhow, that is long story short, that's what the ideal would be. But we are just really working on maximizing the impact at all the locations that we have, meaning we want more participants in our program so they can not only learn the game of soccer correctly from the beginning. I'm a soccer player. I used to play in the WSL. So very important to me that we have the actual people think, little kid soccer. I'm like, no, like they're learning these foundations that they're going to need later. So we want to do that, but we're also really focusing this year on building the community, because there's been a lot of studies that say military families feel like they're on an island within a regular city, and so that they don't have anyone to depend on or feel like they can call and stuff like that. So our sessions are open to civilians as well. And so we're really trying to encourage that, like, make friends in the community. Like, you're sitting by each other at soccer every day, every Saturday, talk with them. Let's build these relationships. And so we're working on that impact and also expanding. So, like we're going to be at Fort Rucker. That's a new one coming up, not at, near Fort Rucker, not on base, right near. So yeah, expanding is definitely on the horizon.
Kudos on the expansion. I say you're very driven, and I would say you're embracing being on the island itself. So you're taking that to another level. Love it. So Amy, let's transition and talk a little bit about leadership now. Is there something you do in your spare time that aids you to thrive in your professional life?
Yeah, so I love to learn. So I have a master's degree. I'm not in any formal courses anymore, but I'm just looking at the stack of books I have here. So I'm always reading a book or two. Some of my top ones that I think everyone should read was Traction by Jean something. So Traction's a good one on building your business, and Profit First. I think every small business owner should read that, because there's so many times you're not paying yourself, right? And it's like, wait, why do I have a business? It was because so I could make some of these things, right? And make some money. And so Profit First is a really good one as well. One I finished recently is called Building a Story Brand. It's right here. That's why I'm looking at it. Donald Miller is that. So that just talked about like what you're putting your business out and the perception of it. So reading, I think, is great to continuously improve. There's always things you can improve on. I'm also a big fan of podcasts, although with my 3 boys, it's not like I get uninterrupted time. So usually I listen to it in like a 10-minute window after preschool drop off or something, right? But that is also valuable lessons. And another thing that I've just done the last 2 years actually is I've joined a mastermind, a business mastermind, where there's not only one head specific coach who and I chose one. I think it's important to choose one of someone who's actually been through entrepreneurship, has a business you aspire to, not just someone who says, I am a business coach. Well, have you had $1 million business? Because if that's what I want. So if not, like, we need to, I need to get in the room with people who have done these things. And so that is an investment. Like, it is more money than you're probably ever used to spending on training for yourself, but I think it's been so valuable.
And I love you taking some time for personal development in all those areas that you mentioned, because they are so critical. And yes, if you can't read a book, hear a book, one of the two, but just get it in. And I'm so happy that you mentioned getting in rooms where you mean to expire, because that's where you want to get to. So by all means, great tips there. Now, you must have gotten some guidance as you was growing up in life, and said, and you have a soccer background, so I know that there's a lot of training that happens in those arenas. And a piece of advice that you said, this is something I'm going to take with me and I'm going to hold on to. What advice would you give and share from those lessons?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and one story that automatically came to mind, because I reference it a lot and I think about it a lot, and it's had a huge impact, is I think I was a junior on my college squad, and one of our senior captains one day was like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so she said, like, "I know you're like super moto." I can say that. She didn't say that, but super moto, like hard driven, you're a leader on this team, but sometimes the way you communicate isn't like, people feel like you're putting them down instead of motivate. I'm thinking it's motivational. They're thinking Amy's yelling at me. And honestly, at first, I was very offended by that. I was not happy to hear that at all. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, all these things I do, blah, 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 all this stuff. But it really made me think of, for the first time, how I communicate with people. And just because that's the way I respond isn't the way they respond. And so, although, if I'm being honest, I don't always like having to evaluate that. I a lot of times just want to be like, take it how you want it. This is what it is. Like, sorry, take it how you want it. Right. But that's really made me think about understanding how I communicate with people, and understanding the way other people communicate too. So I think that's something that's really important that people need, as leaders, definitely you need to be aware of.
Absolutely. Communication style is key, especially when you want to influence as a leader or motivate your team. So,
Mhm.
and having that self-awareness that, yes, I definitely have to work on that, because it's true.
Mhm.
It
It
doesn't
is.
fit everybody's cup of tea. So it might work in certain areas. We know the military works really good,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but others it doesn't. So let's talk about, so that was a challenge. So how do you handle business challenges you currently face or facing?
It's I go to those resources. So I go to the books, I go to the podcasts. With a mastermind, that's one thing that's great, is that I have someone to ask who has been there and say, "Hey, I have this situation." But even if you aren't in a formal mastermind, I have a lot of mentors that I've met just through connections like this, and like, I know what you guys are good at. So maybe later I would say, "Hey, do you guys have an idea? Like, do you have 20 minutes? I have a question about this." And as business owners and leaders, you don't have a lot of time. So I realize that. But even as I grow and get more time in my schedule, I think we're all the type of people who then want to help other people. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And if someone's busy, then they'll tell you they're busy and they can't do it. But I think reaching out to people, is in asking is important. I also think utilizing free resources. So I didn't mention that, but I do that a ton. Like, I get webinars from SBDC, so Small Business Development Centers. Like, I get those emails and quick scan, like, is there anything I can look at in here that would be good? The Rosie Network is one place that they have a lot of free webinars. So really just utilizing, like, okay, what do I need to learn, and trying to find free resources sometimes too.
Yeah, it's vital to make sure that you go and see if you can get it free first
Yeah,
before
yeah,
you
for
go try
sure.
to pay for it. But whatever the level that you need, look
Mhm.
for it, find it, because it's out there,
Yeah.
and you don't have to pedal, alone, an uphill journey, right? So for the last couple of years, we've had plenty of opportunities for change. And it seemed like at every corner, there was something else we had to adapt to and change something, either in our corporation organization or how we were going to actually respond to a certain thing. So how do you handle periods of change and and strategize around those times?
I'll have to say, the pandemic definitely threw us into that, right? So prior to that, I was pretty in control of things and not having to worry about change too much unless I wanted to implement a change, right? But when things are forced upon you like that, I think it's important to take the time to be mad about it and like, are you kidding me? Like, again, like, now I have to do this. But then you have to get resourceful, and that's where, like, that's the make or break point. Like, okay, I'm not going to let my business fail. So what else can I do? Checking out, like, are there grants for, now there's all of a sudden grants for profit businesses. So great. That usually, that wasn't common before. Check into those, get in those. I think networking during change is really good because you have support and you get people from different areas giving you different perspectives. So it just kind of widens your knowledge base and like how you could traject in a different area, or give you an example of, okay, well, they did it this way. Like, And you don't always have to do it exactly how they're doing it, but take pieces that work for your organization and you, and like, okay, I like what that business is doing, and they kind of went this way. I think also is accepting when a change doesn't work, which is hard, as I think, at least for me as a business owner, because you're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then you're 3 months down the road and you have money invested in it and time and people. And you're like, oh, that's not really working. And then it's kind of a shot to your confidence, right? Like, oh, like what kind of leadership was that? I thought this was a great idea. So just being able to accept, when your changes and plans don't work out either. So I don't know if I answered that well. I kind of went around, but.
No, I think it was valuable. I mean, acceptance of the change, even if you see failure or going down the wrong rabbit hole, but acceptance of self as a leader. Be mad at it for, bookmark 20 hours. I'm going to be mad and then I'm going to get over, right?
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned diversity of thought, embracing the diversity of thought of different individuals from different platforms. So no, great answer, great response. So folks listening in, there's some great things that Amy has shared with us. And for those who want to hear how to get a hold of Amy or the Tiny Troop Soccer, how do they go about doing so?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great place to connect, as you guys know. So I can be found there, Amy Tiny Troop Soccer. And I want to kind of throw this out there if you guys don't mind. So we're always looking for coaches, and we're really trying to tap in to the veteran community. Recently, we feel like veterans may, obviously they love to serve, they love being around the military community. And although I will say a preschool soccer coach is very different probably from being an active duty Marine. You're still able to give back. So we're looking for coaches too. You don't have to be military affiliated. We just say, if you love being with kids, being dedicated, like being around soccer, you can head to our website. We're actually getting our brand new one is being finished up next week. So that's tinytroopsoccer.com. If you have any questions, info@tinytroopsoccer.com. Pretty much just put in Tiny Troop Soccer. You'll find us everywhere.
Outstanding. So thank you, Amy, for that. And we'll make sure that we have that as a part of the show notes and a video so that folks can get a hold of you. And anybody looking to get a hold of us, the leadershipvoid@gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. We'll look at and entertain anything you've put on there. If you want us to look at leadership topics or speak about leadership topics, or you would like to see a guest on our show, please do so by sending that information to that email. Thank you, Amy, so much for what you're doing, not only for the tiny troops, those young kids that are going to be our future, but also for the military community, the spouse community, and now the veteran community, and getting them employed in something that they could actually find valuable, not only to what they are contributing to the world, but for themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
And also, Amy, I talk about embracing that island. And for those listening in that want to embrace their own island, we have this radio check with this show we do on every first and the 15th. It's talking about our own mental health, talk about our own self, right? So an opportunity on the 1st and the 15th at 1900, which is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can look at us at LinkedIn Live. We're there every 1st and the 15th, like a payday. Couple other things. We have a subscription drive to reach our 200 subscriber on our YouTube channel of the Leadership Void. And for those who also just hit link like us, they're going to enter into that, draw into that book that Enrique is holding up called Standing O. Speak about reading, the Salute Edition from Scott McGregor, which is an autographed book. Another great giveaway for those who have not heard the Alex Rodriguez episode we had in January. Listen to that episode. You will win into a drawing to a free suit, business suit, tailor-made for male or female. So all you got to do is listen to the episode, answer those questions, send it to us, and the rest, hopefully you'll be the winner, right? We couldn't do this without our sponsor from the Round Point Mortgage Service Corporation of the home team. So thank you for being there. And as Amy, and then next week, we continue down the path, listening to some great dynamic guests. But today we're here with the director and founder and owner of Tiny Troop Soccer. So thank you, Amy, again, and happy February.
Thanks, guys.